Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. The Torah of Mosheh, the Torah of YHSWH Messiah, Part 1. Why many are pushing a false narrative to circumvent the Torah of YHSWH Messiah. The podcast objectives are: reveal how YHSWH is the completion of the Torah, reveal the impetus for the creation of false doctrine, reveal why many resist the spiritual standard of YHSWH Messiah, and reveal the next step in this spiritual analysis. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in YHSWH Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcasts or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us, for these are troubling times and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. The goal of the Torah. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome back to our Word from a Watchman series. In our most recent lesson, we revealed the greatest deception in our world today. And today, we will begin to expose this deception. That said, I advise you to hold on to your hats, my friends, for there is much the Ruach has to say concerning this deception. And per usual, I will be quick, but not in a hurry. Now, first things first, I will restate the deception we touched on last Friday with the following revelation. The false Hebrews have been deceived into elevating the Torah of Mosheh over the Tehudah and the Torah of YHSWH Messiah. Now, that was the inflection. Here is the problem. Many problems, actually. First and foremost, the elevation of one Torah above the other forces them to be in conflict with each other. Here is why this is a major issue. The Torah of Mosheh and the Torah of YHSWH Messiah are in agreement with each other. And where there is agreement, there can be no conflict. My dear friends, YHSWH testified of this matter, saying, "Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete." And get this, where there is completion, there can be no conflict. Romans 10:4 is revealing, for Messiah is the goal of the Torah unto righteousness to everyone who believes. Now, in line with this verse, our fulfillment of the Torah lies in our ability and willingness to follow the steps of Yahushua Messiah. This is why I constantly refer to him as our spiritual standard. For as Shaul is revealing, he is the goal. Not only this, but it is by his spiritual standard that we achieve the unity of the faith. For look, listen, it has been written, and he himself gave some as emissaries, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers for the perfecting of the set apart ones, until we all come to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah. My dear friends, this is one of the more critical matters you must understand, for it is the fundamental reason why our nation is divided. And as crucial as it is, I will offer it to you as a revelation. Consider this: the Torah of Yahushua Messiah is the only belief system that has the power to achieve the unity of the faith. This is why the scriptures portray Yahushua Messiah as the great unifier. For unlike the Torah of Mosheh, his Torah will unify the renewed nation of Israel. And yet, his Torah is established upon the Torah of Mosheh, and thus his Torah validates the Torah of Mosheh. For as he is the goal of the former Torah, his Torah elevates the Torah of Mosheh to a higher spiritual plane. And by the Ruach of Elohim, we can see the spiritual evolution of the Torah in a single thread aligned with the divine order of Elohim. Now, these things being what they surely are, the question we should chiefly entertain is this: why are the false Hebrews manufacturing conflict between the Torah of Moshe and the Torah of Yahushua Messiah? As I say, one is an evolution of the other, and the Torah is our schoolmaster to bring us unto Yahushua Messiah. For he is the goal, and where the student achieves the full desire of the schoolmaster, there can be no conflict. There is only harmony and an entrance made into the eternal kingdom of the heavens. That said, I ask again, why are false Hebrews manufacturing conflict between the students and the schoolmaster? The answer is sure, and it is the primary topic of today's lesson. And so, if you are ready, let's get started. To validate some other way. Now, if you were tuned in last Friday, then you have an idea of where I am going next. To wit, the reason why the false Hebrews are manufacturing conflict between Yahushua and the Torah of Moshe is because they resist his spiritual standard. And the reason why is sure. It is because they are habitual transgressors, villains, and thieves, while he, Yahushua Messiah, is the perfect man. Here lies the conflict, my dear friends, and you must get this, for it is the foundation of this massive controversy. Look here. The false Hebrews have proven themselves to be the spiritual offspring of the wicked one, which again is why the scriptures refer to them as the synagogue of Satan, for they resist the command that we should follow the perfect man. For look, listen, it has been written, watch the perfect man and observe the upright, for the latter end of that man is peace. Look again, my friends, and listen. Listen. Elohim desire to make known the riches of the esteem of this secret among the nations, which is Messiah in you, the hope of glory, whom we announce, in order to present every man perfect in Yahushua Messiah. Not only this, but remember, all scripture is breathed out by Elohim and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Elohim might be perfect, thoroughly furnished for every good work. Now, if you heard that, hear this. For to this you were called, because Messiah also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who, being reviled, did not revile in return, suffering did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously, who himself bore our sins in his body on the timber, so that we, having died to sins, might live unto righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed. Now, I could go on, but I believe I have proved my point. Vis-a-vis, as Messiah is the goal of the Torah. The goal of the Torah is, in fact, perfection in the Ruach of Elohim. This is why the command is not hard to understand, for we should quite simply follow the perfect man. Now, that was the inflection. Here is the problem, and we touched on it last Friday. Vis-a-vis, the majority resist the command because they have no desire to achieve the spiritual discipline required to achieve perfection in the Ruach of Elohim. And so, what do they do? Well, I'll tell you. But first, let me tell you what they should do. To wit, they should admit that they are spiritual lightweights and delinquents who are unwilling to follow the command, and then just get out of the way. However, that is not the path they take, for they are also liars and spiritual deviants. Ergo, they wrestle with the scriptures to manufacture various forms of false doctrine. Here is why. Yahushua Messiah is the truth and the way into everlasting life. Ergo, seeing as they did not receive a love for the truth, they refuse to follow the way. Ergo, they must manufacture contra doctrine to validate some other way, because they are outside of the truth and they have no life. A back door into everlasting life. Now, it goes without saying that this maneuvering is as delusional as it is insane. To wit, these false Hebrews are trying to find some back door into everlasting life under the premise that Yahuwah and all the hosts of the heavens will not notice. 'Tis madness, 'tis insanity, 'tis foolishness, 'tis folly. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, as ludicrous as this is, people are taking these insane actions every day, and you should know why. After all you have learned about the progression of ignorance and deception. Along these lines, these false Hebrews have progressed from error to confusion. Ergo, they are far beyond the point of no return. Ergo, the only path they can follow is filled with delusion and insanity. And although there are many paths they are following, they are all centered on the greatest deception of all time. Enter eternal security, a false doctrine which deceives men and women into believing they can be saved without fulfilling the requirements on salvation. Now, as you have learned, there are many versions of eternal security, and yet there is a single thread that unites each one. Get this: every version of eternal security is designed to circumvent the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. Along these lines, the false Hebrews are attempting to circumvent Yahushua Messiah by creating a false reality where belief in Yahushua is contrary to the Torah of Mosheh. Here is why. By elevating the Torah of Mosheh above the Tehudah and the Torah of Yahushua Messiah, they are trying to find scriptural grounds for the delusion they are under. My dear friends, I call you to remember the definition of delusion. To wit, a delusion is, and I quote, something a person believes and wants to be true when it is in fact not true. Along these lines, these false Hebrews want to believe there is a path into the kingdom of heaven that does not require them to follow the steps of Yahushua Messiah. What is worse, they have twisted many scriptures to feed into this false narrative. In effect, they have taken various scriptural premises out of context, not knowing that they are engaging in the highest level of blasphemy, and their blasphemy will not be forgiven. You should consider that if you are ever enticed to follow these lawbreakers down this dark path. Now, I'll show you how this is blasphemy in a future podcast. But for now, it is important that you understand what is driving this false narrative. To wit, these false Hebrews are not trying to defend the Torah of Mosheh. Listen to me. These villains and thieves are breaking the Torah every hour of every day, or they are associating with those who do, giving their approval to the destruction of the Torah they claim to defend. What foolishness! My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, this is nothing new. False Hebrews making their boast in the Torah by breaking the Torah has always been a flaw within this nation. For look, listen, it has been written, you make your boast in the Torah through the transgression of the Torah. For the name of Elohim is blasphemed among the nations because of you, as it has been written. Now, that's the thing you must remember, and it is why these false Hebrews are not following this ministry. As I say, Yahuwah purged them out during phase 1. The reason why is sure, and it is at the foundation of this controversy. Along these lines, you should reconsider the 16 degrees at the foundation of lawlessness, which you see to the right. Please feel free to take a few moments and pause the video. Now, if you recall, I made it clear that anyone operating in these 16 degrees would not succeed in phase 2. And so they were not invited to join us. It's not because I'm some mean fellow or a terrible guy. Quite the contrary. It's because anyone who is operating in any of these degrees is not wearing the girdle of truth. Besides, the spiritual contamination they would bring to this ministry, these individuals have no path for succeeding in phase two. And there is nothing you or I can do. Now, here's the thing I want you to get vis-a-vis everyone who is elevating the Torah of Mosheh above the Tehudah and the Torah of Yahushua Messiah is operating in these 16 degrees. My dear friends, you must believe me. I have seen it for over the past 2 decades. Not only this, but it makes perfect sense and it agrees with the scriptures. To wit, these false Hebrews boast in the Torah whilst they operate in lawlessness. And this is why they resist the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. For being infected with the 16 degrees you see to the right, they are setting themselves up to be infected by that which follows, i.e., the 16 deadliest degrees of lawlessness. And they are ignorance, deception, rejection, faultlessness, disregard, misconception, imprudence, insanity, error, confusion, indecision, misjudgment, denial, delusion, incompetence, and failure. The next step in this spiritual analysis. Now, we spent the majority of this podcast analyzing the impetus behind this satanic movement, which again is designed to hide Yahushua Messiah from the nation and to lead the masses down one of the many dark paths of eternal security. And yet, we did not discuss the details of the controversy, and that was by design. My dear friends, trust me, we will analyze the details surrounding the false narrative these false Hebrews are pushing further into this series and at the appointed time. Notwithstanding, you must appreciate why Yahuwah wants you to understand the genesis for this false narrative as a priority. He wants you to see what is driving it from the very start. Here is why. Every false narrative is based upon a delusion. And when you argue that false narrative, you are giving credence to the delusion. Ergo, the first thing the Ruach led me to do is ensure that you understand that this is not a sane argument. To wit, there are no valid points that could be made to support this false narrative. It is all a lie. Now, as I say, it is not Yahuwah's will that we argue the spiritual fantasies of false Hebrews and false prophets. Quite the contrary, it is his will that we expose them. Here again, that is the purpose of my Word from a Watchman series. By the sword of the Ruach, we will expose many false doctrines, and we will begin by revealing what is driving these false doctrines. As I say, men and women don't wake up each morning looking to be deceived. And yet, many men and women are being deceived every hour of every day by the thousands. And the first question we must ask ourselves is, why? Listen to me. If you don't understand the why factor, you will struggle to complete a spiritual analysis. That said, we have established the why factor. To wit, we know why false Hebrews are elevating the Torah of Mosheh above the Tehudah and the Torah of Yahushua Messiah. Here again, it is because they don't want to follow his steps, even though his steps lead to everlasting life. And yet, even though they refuse to follow his steps, they want to believe there is some other path into the kingdom of heaven. And so they wrestled with the scriptures. And this false narrative was the best thing they could produce. Now, that said, the question of the hour is simply this: what is the next step in this spiritual analysis? To wit, what is the next factor we must address? The answer is sure. We must address the false premise that the Torah of Mosheh and the Torah of YHSWH Messiah are incongruent. And that, my friends, is what I'm going to do next Friday. I'm going to show you how these two orders are in perfect alignment with the divine order of Elohim. In the process, I will share many uncommon truths Yahuwah desires you to know. As I say, this is how you expose false doctrine. Vis-a-vis, you establish why the doctrine is false, and then you go to work with the sword of the Ruach, making an affirmative case that reveals the truth, which has the power to speak for itself while eradicating all darkness. And so, if you're with me, I encourage you to stay with me. And remember, this is the primary deception destroying our nation, which is why the Ruach has led me to address it as a priority. And we will continue to address it next Friday. Yahuwah bless you until then. Now, here is the final word. They boast in the Torah, but never kept, for they refuse to follow his steps. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, one of the biggest takeaways from this lesson is sure. The false Hebrews who resist YHSWH Messiah are lawbreakers. And yet, because they are delusional, confused, and fools, they boast in the law which they are breaking. And this makes perfect sense, for dishonesty and disobedience are two of the degrees of lawlessness they are infected with. Ergo, they are breaking the Torah in the spirit of disobedience. And then they lie to themselves about the consequences of their transgressions in the spirit of dishonesty. Now, that's just a minor fraction of what is going on in their tortured minds. And yet, this is just the beginning of the torture they will see. For by resisting the spiritual standard of YHSWH Messiah, they forfeit the hope of glory, which is burning brightly inside of you and me. Heretofore, I recommend watch the perfect man and observe the upright, and make that man your goal, and be watchful of the deceivers in our midst. My children, keep thy very soul. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson, and if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com, and I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, The Torah of Mosheh, the Torah of YHSWH Messiah, Part 1. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 538, The Impact of Ignorance and Deception, Part 8. I will post this podcast on Monday, November 24th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, Continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.